Look, girls, you won't believe what I saw out my window this morning. I'm Ruth, and as you already know, I don't miss a thing that happens here in the neighborhood. And this story I'm going to tell you today. My God, I'm still processing it all. For those new to the channel, I'm Ruth. I've lived here for over 20 years, and let's just say, I have a privileged view of everything that happens on the street. My kitchen window faces the Silva house, and over the years I've seen a lot happen around here. I've seen weddings, births, moves, parties, and even a few fights. Real life isn't all roses, right, girls? But today's story was one of the most surprising I've ever witnessed in all my years living here. And before we get into the story itself, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell. This really helps me continue bringing you these real neighborhood stories. It was a Tuesday morning, very early, around 7:30 in the morning. I always wake up early. You know, people my age can't sleep in. And the first thing I do is make my coffee and glance out the window to see what's happening on the street. It was a rainy morning, one of those typical March ones, with that fine, persistent rain that seems like it will never stop. The sky was gray, covered in low clouds, and there was that light mist that makes everything a bit mysterious, you know? I was there having my breakfast, bread with butter and a banana, my usual, when I saw the door to the Silva house open. It was Pedro, Carla's husband, coming out with an object in his hands. From a distance, I couldn't quite see what it was. The Silva house, for those unfamiliar, is the light blue house directly across from mine, with a small but well-kept garden. They've lived there for about 8 years. A well-structured family. Pedro, who works at an accounting firm. Carla, who owns a clothing store downtown. And their 2 children, 15-year-old Miguel and 22-year-old Isabella. They've always been exemplary neighbors, you know? They've never been a problem. They always say hello when we pass each other on the street, and their children are well-mannered. Pedro always keeps the garden tidy. Carla is always friendly when we bump into each other at the grocery store. A family that has never given me cause for concern. That's why, when I saw Pedro leaving the house with that first object, I thought it was strange. It was too early to be carrying anything, and besides, it was raining. Who goes out to carry things in the rain so early in the morning? I placed my coffee cup on the windowsill and positioned myself better to observe. Pedro placed the object, which I could now see was a chair, right in the middle of the sidewalk, in the rain. A dining chair, one of those dark wood ones, well preserved. How strange, I thought to myself. Why is he putting a chair out on the sidewalk in the rain? My first reaction was that maybe the chair had broken, and he was putting it out for the garbage man to take. But the chair looked perfectly fine. A few minutes later, Pedro returned with another chair, then another, and another. When I saw 4 chairs lined up on the sidewalk in the rain, my curiosity was at its peak. What was going on there? Then Carla appeared. She came out of the house wearing an apron over her clothes. Those floral aprons housewives wear to protect their clothes when they're cleaning the house. But she wasn't cleaning the house. She was walking over to the chairs with a cloth in her hand. And girls, you won't believe it. She started drying the chairs one by one. There in the rain, she dried one chair. The rain wet it again, and she dried another. It didn't make any sense. By this point, I'd completely abandoned my breakfast. I grabbed my blue plastic chair, you've seen it before, and positioned myself strategically by the window. When Ruth senses a mystery in the air, she won't rest until she finds out what's going on. Pedro went back inside, and this time took longer to reappear. When he came out again, he was carrying something much larger. A love seat, a light brown, well-kept sofa, the one I always saw through their living room window when I passed by. But man, carrying a sofa alone is hard. Pedro was sweating, even with the rain and the morning chill. He placed the sofa next to the chairs and stood there for a few minutes, catching his breath. Then he grabbed the sofa cushions and placed them on top, as if he were tidying up a living room on the sidewalk. Carla continued with her habit of drying the furniture. Now she had a bigger towel and was wiping the entire sofa. The rain would wet it, and she would dry it. Wet it again, and she would dry it again. It was driving me crazy. At that moment, Miguel, the youngest son, appeared. He came out of the house carrying a television, a modern flat-screen one, not at all old. And the boy was protecting it from the rain with a large plastic bag. Now, pay attention to this, girls. Who protects a television from the rain only to abandon it on the street? If it were trash, he wouldn't be protecting it. If it were a dump, he wouldn't have time to protect it. But then what was it? Miguel placed the TV on a small table already on the sidewalk, a table I hadn't even seen them move out of the house. He arranged everything carefully, as if he were setting up a room. Then he took a cloth from his pocket and wiped the TV screen. Girls, who cleans TV screens to throw them away? That wasn't making any sense. That's when Isabella, the eldest daughter, appeared. She came out of the house with a broom in her hand and began sweeping around the furniture. She swept under the sofa, around the chairs, cleaning the entire area as if she were preparing a room. Then she went over each piece of furniture and wiped it down with a damp cloth, cleaning each piece with a care that really caught my attention. It wasn't a rushed clean, like someone who wants to get rid of things quickly. It was a careful, detailed clean. The rain kept falling, that annoying March rain, and the whole family was there on the sidewalk, getting wet along with the furniture, but taking care of each piece as if it were something very precious. By this point, I had already come up with several theories. The first, of course, was eviction. A family that had lost their home and was being forced to move their furniture onto the street. But the calm with which they did everything didn't match this theory. An evicted person is desperate, running, trying to salvage what they can. The second theory was moving. They had bought a new house and were moving. But where was the moving truck? And why leave the furniture on the sidewalk to get wet in the rain instead of keeping it protected inside until it was time to move? The third theory was a sale. Perhaps they were selling the furniture and had placed it on the sidewalk for buyers to pick up. But who buys furniture that's been wet from the rain? And why do they clean it so much if they were just going to sell it used? The fourth theory was donation. Perhaps they were donating to a relative or friend. But why in the rain? Why not wait for a dry day? While I was there theorizing, the commotion continued. Pedro appeared carrying a disassembled wardrobe. He had all the pieces separated. The sides, the door, the shelves, the handles. Everything neatly organized like an assembly kit. Isabella came with a toolbox and began checking every screw and fitting. She jotted things down on a piece of paper, as if she were taking a technical inventory of each part. Carla appeared with a clipboard, yes, an official clipboard, and began taking more detailed notes. She walked over to each piece of furniture, measured something with a tape measure, wrote it down on paper, then moved on to the next. Man, what kind of organization was that? It looked more like a military operation than a family getting rid of furniture. Around 9 in the morning, when I was completely absorbed in observation, people began to appear on the street. The first was Donna Francisca, who lives around the corner, a woman in her 70s, always very friendly. Donna Francisca stopped in front of the Silva house, greeted the family, looked at all the furniture carefully, chatted with Carla for about 5 minutes, but then left empty-handed. She didn't take anything, didn't ask the price, just looked and chatted. Soon after, Samuel appeared, the man who runs the bike shop nearby, about 50 years old, always in blue overalls. He did the same thing. He stopped, said hello, looked around, chatted a bit, and left without taking anything. And Carla kept writing on her clipboard. Every time someone stopped to talk, she wrote down their name. What strange behavior was this? Next, it was Mrs. Louisa's turn, who works at the municipal daycare center. She arrived, looked at the furniture even more closely, even sitting on the sofa to test it out, opening and closing the wardrobe doors and testing the chairs. It seemed like she was evaluating the quality of everything. Donna Luisa talked to Carla for a while longer. They spoke very quietly, and I could only hear a few stray words. Families, needs, list, tomorrow. What mysterious conversation was that? The strangest thing is that all these people seemed to know what was going on. No one asked, "What's going on here?" No one showed surprise. It was as if it was something planned, prearranged. By 10 in the morning, I couldn't just watch anymore. My curiosity was at its limit. I decided to do something that I don't normally do. Leave the house and go there pretending to have some reason. First, I thought about pretending to check my mailbox, but it's across the street. Then I thought about pretending to sweep my sidewalk, but I'd just swept it yesterday. Finally, I decided on the classic excuse. I was offering to help. I put up an umbrella, because the rain was still falling, and crossed the street. As I approached, the first thing I noticed was the quality of the furniture. Wow, it wasn't old or damaged. Everything was in excellent condition. The sofa only had those normal signs of wear, you know. Nothing that would detract from its value. The chairs were perfect, with just a few superficial scratches. The TV worked perfectly. Miguel had turned it on to show someone. "Good morning, everyone," I said, coming closer. "Is everything okay? Do you need any help?" Carla greeted me with a smile. "Ah, Mrs. Ruth. I'm so glad you came here. We've been wanting to talk to you." Talk to me? Why did they want to talk to me? My curiosity grew even more. "We are doing something very special today," Carla continued. "But it's still kind of a secret. Can you keep it a secret until tomorrow?" Secret? What was that secret? I promised yes, of course. When we're curious, we promise anything. But before Carla could explain anything, a truck arrived on the street. And girls, it wasn't a regular moving truck, a garbage truck or a city truck. It was a white truck, well-maintained, with a logo I could now read up close. Home Sweet Home, Solidarity Furniture. Pedro waved to the driver and shouted, "You can park right there, guys. Everything is already organized." 3 uniformed men, wearing blue t-shirts and caps, got out of the truck. They greeted the entire Silva family as if they were longtime friends. And most impressively, they began inspecting the furniture one by one, as if conducting a quality inspection. One of the men, who seemed to be the boss, said to Pedro, "You guys really did a great job, huh? I've never seen a donation so well taken care of. The people at the center are going to be thrilled." Donation. Finally, a word that was starting to make sense in the whole story. But I still had several questions. The man continued, "With this complete donation, we will be able to help at least 5 families who are on our priority list. There are families who have been sleeping on the floor for months, waiting for furniture." Isabella approached the men and handed them a folder of documents. "Here's a complete list of everything we're donating, with a detailed description of each item's condition and photos we took yesterday." Photos? Had they photographed all the furniture? How organized was that? One of the men leafed through the folder and commented, "Impressive. You did a more thorough job than many professional companies. This will make distribution much easier." The men began loading the furniture with impressive care. It wasn't the usual rush of moving, nor the speed of dumping. Each piece was treated as if it were something truly valuable. The sofa was the first to be loaded. 2 men held it, one on each side, to prevent dents or scratches. They used special blankets to protect it during transport. The table was completely wrapped before being loaded onto the truck. The Silva family oversaw everything, but not with a look of sad farewell, not with a look of loss. They had an expression of satisfaction, like someone who's accomplished something they've planned for a long time and is seeing it come to fruition. Miguel saw me watching and came over to talk. "Miss Ruth, you must be curious about all this activity, right?" I confirmed that it was, and she was very intrigued. He smiled and said, "It's a very nice surprise. My mother will explain everything to you after everyone finishes loading." Meanwhile, familiar faces from the neighborhood continued to arrive. There was Donna Marina, who lives 2 houses down from mine, There was Mr. Antonio, who works at the bakery on the corner. There was even Professor Helena, who teaches at Miguel's school. And all these people had the same reaction. They watched the furniture being carried, talked with their families, expressed joy and satisfaction, but no one took anything home. It was as if they were witnesses to something important, not beneficiaries. Donna Marina commented to me, "Ruth, what a beautiful thing this family is doing. This should be an example for everyone." Example of what? My curiosity was almost killing me. As the men carried away the larger pieces of furniture, I noticed there was still a lot of stuff on the sidewalk. Boxes of household items, linens and table linens organized in clear plastic bags, and some smaller appliances appeared. Isabella was organizing these smaller items with special care. She had labels and was sticking them on each item, writing something by hand. I could read a few. Sheet set, double, cotton, bath towels, 6 units, excellent condition. Why so organized? I asked her. Because every family has different needs, she explained. A family with a baby needs different things than a family with just adults. This organization helps distribute them correctly. It made sense, but that family's dedication was impressing me more and more. Miguel approached, carrying a box full of books. These are textbooks I no longer use, some novels we've already read, and school supplies I've had in storage, he explained. What are you donating books for, too? Because education is also a basic need, he replied with a maturity that impressed me. There are children who don't have books to read at home. We researched and discovered that this makes a huge difference in their development. What a thoughtful boy. I was impressed by how that family had thought through every detail of the donation. When the truck was almost fully loaded, Carla finally came over to talk to me properly. She asked us to sit on the small wall in front of their house, protected from the rain by the small overhang. "Mrs. Ruth, I'm going to tell you everything, but I ask you not to spread the word until tomorrow, because we want to do something special for the neighborhood." I promised again that I would keep it a secret. Pedro's aunt, his mother's sister, passed away last month. She was a very simple woman. She lived alone in a small house in the countryside, but she had saved a little money throughout her life. She paused, watching the men finish loading the last of the furniture. She left her entire inheritance to Pedro, who was her only close relative. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a good amount, enough for us to renew all the furniture in the house. Now it was starting to make sense. When we went shopping to choose new furniture, we looked at our old furniture and thought, why not give it a useful purpose? It's all in good condition and still has many years of use ahead of it, Carla continued. It was Miguel who suggested researching institutions that donate furniture to needy families. We found this NGO, Lar Doce Lar, and were impressed with the work they do. They visit families, assess their real needs, and provide social support. It's not just a matter of delivering furniture and leaving. They help families organize themselves, provide guidance, and do a comprehensive job. What a serious job. I was impressed. But Mrs. Ruth, we didn't decide this overnight, Carla continued. We planned everything for a whole month. She explained to me that the family had made detailed plans for the entire operation. First, we made a complete list of all the furniture and objects we were going to donate. Then, we cleaned and inspected each piece, repaired small defects, and replaced screws when necessary. Isabella, who is studying nursing, had the idea of photographing everything and creating fact sheets describing the condition of each item. This makes the NGO's work much easier when it comes to distribution. What an impressive organization. We also researched the families the NGO serves. We wanted to understand what their most common needs were, what types of furniture were most urgently needed. Pedro approached at that moment and added, "We discovered that many families who lost everything in floods, fires, or evictions spend months sleeping on the floor, eating standing up, with no place to store their clothes. It's a situation we can't even imagine." That's why we decided to donate a complete set, Carla continued. Not just one thing or another, but everything needed to set up a basic home. Furniture for sleeping, eating, and storage. At that moment, a woman I didn't know arrived. She introduced herself as the coordinator of the NGO, Lar Doce Lar. She was a woman in her 50s, very friendly and communicative. "Ms. Ruth," she said after Carla introduced me. "You can't imagine the difference a donation like this makes in people's lives." She explained that that week, they were going to deliver the silver furniture to 4 specific families. One is a single mother with 3 young children who lost everything in a fire 6 months ago. She was able to rent a small house, but she couldn't afford furniture. The children were sleeping on mattresses on the floor. Another family is an elderly couple who were evicted from the apartment where they had lived for 20 years. The old man has back problems and can't stand for long periods of time, but they didn't even have a chair. Girls, my heart sank hearing that. The third family is a young man who recently left a shelter for minors and is trying to establish himself. He got a job and rented a small room, but he was literally broke. And the fourth is a family that came from another state fleeing domestic violence. The mother brought her 2 young daughters, and they are starting their lives from scratch. The coordinator continued. With your donation, these 4 families will have their dignity back. They will be able to sit down to eat, have a place to sleep properly, and a place to store their things. As we talked, I noticed a small group of neighbors had formed, watching the action. Donna Francisca, Seu Samuel, Donna Luisa, Donna Marina. Everyone was there, watching the final stages of the operation. The NGO coordinator took the opportunity to talk to everyone. She explained how their work worked, how people could contribute, and what types of donations they needed most. It doesn't always have to be a large piece of furniture, she clarified. Sometimes a pot, a blanket, or hygiene products make a huge difference. The important thing is that it's in good condition and delivered with care. Mr. Samuel, who had been quiet until then, said, "I have some tools stored at home that I don't use anymore. Will they be of any use?" "Of course it works. There are a lot of people trying to work on their own, and they don't have the basic tools," the coordinator responded excitedly. Donna Francisca commented, "I have some winter clothes that have been stored away for years. They're brand new, but they don't fit me anymore." And so a movement began among the neighbors, each remembering things they had at home that could be useful to others. After the truck finished loading and left, I stayed to chat with the Silva family for a bit longer. I wanted to better understand what had motivated them to do all of this. "Donna Ruth," Pedro explained, "when we received this inheritance, our first reaction was joy. We were going to be able to renovate the house, buy new things that we had wanted for years. But then we stopped to think, would Aunt Alzira be happy knowing that her money was used only for our comfort?" Carla added. Isabella joined the conversation. "My great-aunt was a very generous person. She didn't have much, but she always helped those in need. We thought she would be proud knowing that her inheritance helped other families too." Miguel, who had been quieter, said, "And we discovered something interesting. Helping others made us feel much better than just buying new things." "What do you mean?" I asked. "It's a different feeling," he explained. "When you buy something new, you're happy right away, but it passes. When you help someone, the happiness lasts longer, you know?" Carla agreed. "We've been talking about this a lot at home. We've realized that having less stuff and knowing we're making a difference in other people's lives makes us feel more fulfilled. And it doesn't stop there," Carla told me. "We've decided this will become a routine in our family." She explained to me that they had established a new rule at home. Every 3 months, they would review all their objects and furniture, separating out things that were in good condition, but that they no longer used. The idea is to never again let good things sit unused while people need them, Pedro explained. Isabella added, "And we also decided that every time we buy something new, We'll first think about whether we really need it. Sometimes we buy on impulse out of consumerism without any real need. Miguel said, at school, the sociology teacher was talking about conscious consumption. We decided to practice it at home. And do you know what else we discovered? Carla asked. That our house is more organized, more spacious, and more enjoyable to live in. What's it like? I asked, curious. When you get rid of things you don't use, you have more space for the things that really matter. Your home becomes less cluttered, easier to clean, and more cozy. During our conversation, I realized that the experience had profoundly impacted the entire family. It wasn't just an isolated good deed, but something that had changed their perspective on consumption, relationships, and community. Carla told me, Donna Ruth, when we saw the joy of those families receiving the furniture, the NGO sent us photos after the delivery. We were very moved. There was a little girl of about 5 who got a bed for the first time in her life. In the photo, she was hugging her teddy bear on top of the new bed, with a smile that couldn't fit on her face. Pedro added, and there was an elderly gentleman who was given an armchair. He was sitting in the armchair with his hands on his chest, as if he couldn't believe it was his. We realized that furniture isn't just furniture, Isabella reflected. It's dignity, it's comfort, it's the ability to receive guests without embarrassment. It's being able to sit at the table with the family for dinner. Miguel added, and we learned that sharing doesn't diminish us. On the contrary, it makes us stronger. What do you mean? I asked. When you give something away, you don't get less. You get more. More gratitude, more awareness, more connection with other people. He explained with a wisdom that impressed me for a 15-year-old boy. In the days following the donation, our street became bustling in a different way. News of what the Silva family had done spread quickly among the neighbors, and reactions were varied. Donna Francisca, who had always been a generous person, showed up at the Silva's house the next day with 2 bags full of children's clothes her grandchildren had worn. They're brand new, she said, and I felt bad throwing them away. Mr. Samuel from the bike shop set aside a box of tools that was stored in the storage room. They're good tools, he told me when he stopped by. Maybe someone could use them to work and earn a little money. Mrs. Louisa from the daycare brought educational toys that the daycare no longer used. The children are grown, and these toys are for younger children, she explained. But they're still perfect. But the reaction that struck me most was that of Professor Helena. She organized a campaign at Miguel's school, involving students, teachers, and staff. In 1 week, they collected school supplies, textbooks, and even some small pieces of furniture that were stored at the school. It was amazing, the teacher told me when I met her at the market. The students were so excited they started bringing things from home too. One mother even came in person to deliver donations. The Saturday after the donation, the Silva family organized that surprise Carla had mentioned. They put up a sign in front of their house inviting all their neighbors to their home for afternoon coffee. We want to share a special experience with you, the invitation said. When I got there, the house was full of neighbors. The living room, now with new furniture, was cozy and welcoming. There was fresh coffee, Carla's homemade cake, and snacks Isabella had made. But the most beautiful part was when they put together a photo presentation. The coordinator of the NGO Lar Doce Lar was there and brought photos of the families who received furniture from the Silvas. Girls, when I saw those photos, I cried right there in their living room. There was a photo of the 5-year-old girl sleeping in her new bed, cuddling her doll. There was the elderly couple sitting at their new table, eating a meal. There was the young man who left the shelter organizing his few clothes in the donated wardrobe. Do you want to know what touched us most? The coordinator asked. It was seeing how each family cared for their furniture as if it were new. They cleaned it, organized it, and treated it with special care. She showed a photo of the single mother with her 3 children, all sitting on the Silva's couch, watching television together. She told us it was the first time in 6 months she'd been able to sit down with her kids to watch a cartoon. The presentation didn't end there. The coordinator took the opportunity to explain in more detail how the NGO worked and how more people could help. "You know that besides furniture, we also need other things?" she asked. "Cleaning products, personal hygiene products, basic medicines, work clothes. And it's not just donating items," she continued. "We need volunteers to help with deliveries, people who know how to fix small furniture defects, people who can offer guidance on home organization." That's when something beautiful happened. Several neighbors offered to help in different ways. Mr. Samuel offered to repair furniture that arrived with minor problems. "I know carpentry," he said. "I can give a makeover to any furniture that's a little damaged." Donna Francisca, who has always been good at cooking, offered to teach basic cooking classes to families starting over. "People often don't know how to make the most of their food," she observed. Teacher Helena offered to tutor children from the families she serves. "Education is the foundation of everything," she said. "If I can help one child improve in school, it's worth it." And so, our little street became a center of solidarity. In the weeks that followed, I could observe from my window a significant change in the dynamics of our street. Neighbors began to talk more among themselves, to greet each other more affectionately, to care about each other. Donna Marina, who had always been somewhat reserved, began to participate more in street conversations. She told me that the Silvas' experience made her reflect on her own possibilities for helping. "Ruth," she said to me one day, "I always thought that to help others you had to have a lot of money and make large donations, but I realized that's not quite the case." She began regularly sorting out gently used clothes and shoes to donate. "I have a closet full of things I haven't worn in years," she admitted. "It's selfish to keep everything in storage." Antonio from the bakery started separating the unsold bread at the end of the day to donate to needy families in the neighborhood. "Before I would throw it in the trash," he told me. "Now at least it feeds someone." Even street children joined in the solidarity movement. Donna Francisca's children began sorting out toys they no longer used to donate to the daycare center where Donna Luisa worked. 3 months after that rainy day, I decided to sit down and talk to the Silva family again about how they viewed the whole experience. "Donna Ruth," Carla told me, "that was one of the best decisions we've ever made in our lives." "Why?" I asked. "Because it completely changed our perspective on what's truly important," Pedro replied. "We discovered that having fewer things and more purpose is much more rewarding." Isabella, who was on vacation from college, added, "And we realized that acts of kindness have a multiplier effect. One good deed inspires other people to do good things too." "It's true," I agreed. "Our whole street changed after what you did." Miguel, who was studying for a test, looked up from his book to join the conversation. "And we learned that you don't have to wait until you have a lot to start helping. Anyone can make a difference in some way." Carla showed me a notebook where she'd written down all the donations the family had made in the past few months. "We've institutionalized this here at home," she explained. "Every month we review and set aside items to donate. And it's not just objects," Pedro added. "We've also started donating time. I go to the NGO once a month to help with the administrative side, which is my area of expertise." The NGO coordinator told me, months later, that the Silva family's donation had generated a wave of solidarity that spread to several neighborhoods in the city. "Do you know what happened, Mrs. Ruth?" she explained when I met her at the bank. "The families who received the Silva furniture were so grateful that they started helping other families too. She told me that the single mother of 3, after she was able to establish herself better, began sewing clothes for other mothers in the community. She learned to sew, and now does it as a way of giving back for the help she received." The elderly couple who received the furniture began tending a community garden in their neighborhood. They had gardening knowledge and began teaching others how to grow herbs and vegetables. The young man who left the shelter got a better job, and now contributes monthly to the NGO. He says he wants to help other young people who are in the same situation as he was. The family that fled domestic violence settled down well in the city, and the mother began volunteering at a support center for women in similar situations. "Did you see?" the coordinator asked me. "One good deed generates other good deeds. It's like throwing a stone into the water and watching the ripples spread out." Acta, this whole experience made me reflect deeply on my own life. There I was, watching from the window, judging situations without knowing the full story, keeping myself apart from the community. I decided I no longer wanted to be just an observer. I wanted to participate, contribute, and be part of the beautiful stories happening around us. I started by sorting out winter clothes I hadn't worn in years. Everything was in good condition, stored in mothballs in my closets. I took 3 large bags to the NGO, Lar Doce Lar. Then I separated books I'd already read and wouldn't read again. They were novels, cookbooks, and some craft magazines. They all went to the community library the NGO maintains. But the most significant change was in the way I interacted with my neighbors. I stopped being just the Ruth who watches from the window and became the Ruth who participates in the life of the community. I started organizing a knitting and crochet group with the women on the street. We meet every Thursday in my living room to make baby clothes that we donate to the maternity ward at the public hospital. A year after that rainy morning, our street had been completely transformed. What began with the Silva family donating furniture had become a permanent movement of solidarity. We organize a monthly swap and donation fair in the square at the end of the street. People bring things they no longer use and take things they need. It's a way to avoid waste and help those in need. Professor Helena managed to set up a tutoring project that serves children from several low-income families in the region. She partnered with the school where she works and the municipal library. Samuel opened his workshop one afternoon a month to teach underprivileged youth how to repair bicycles. Many of these young people found work after the course, and some even set up their own small workshops. Donna Francisca has become famous in the region for her budget-friendly cooking classes. She teaches nutritious and affordable recipes, how to use food, and how to preserve it. The classes take place at the church on the corner and are always packed. The Silva family has continued their quarterly donation routine, but now they also coordinate larger campaigns. Last Christmas, they organized a drive that collected toys and clothes for more than 200 children. Girls, this whole story taught me several important lessons that I want to share with you. First lesson, don't judge by appearances. How often do we jump to conclusions about situations we observe? I saw furniture on the sidewalk and immediately thought it was a tragedy, when in fact it was a beautiful gesture of solidarity. Lesson 2, the importance of community. When neighbors come together for a common cause, amazing things can happen. Our little street has become an example of how a community can make a difference. Lesson 3, generosity is contagious. A good deed inspires others to do good as well. The Silva's donation sparked a wave of solidarity that continues to this day. Lesson 4, you don't have to be rich to help. Everyone can contribute what they have. Time, knowledge, objects in good condition, a smile, a loving conversation. Fifth lesson, helping others is good for the helper. The Silva family discovered that generosity brought more satisfaction than consumerism. They are happier helping others than simply accumulating things. Lesson 6, small actions can have big impacts. What began as a furniture donation turned into a solidarity network that changed the lives of dozens of families. And now I want to extend an invitation to those of you watching this video. Look around your homes and see if you have things in good condition that could make a difference in someone's life. It doesn't have to be a large donation, nor does it have to be furniture. It could be clothes that no longer fit, books that have already been read, toys that the children no longer use, kitchen utensils that are in storage. Look for reputable organizations in your city. Talk to your neighbors and see if you can organize something together. Sometimes the solution to people's problems is right around the corner. And remember, generosity isn't about quantity, it's about intention. It's about looking at others with affection and thinking, how can I help? The Silva family taught me that a rainy morning can be the beginning of something beautiful. That old furniture can become new dreams for others. That a small action can generate ripples of kindness that spread far beyond what we can imagine. Girls, when I started telling this story, you might have thought it would be a typical neighborhood story. But I hope you realize there's no such thing as a typical story when it comes to human kindness. Every generous gesture, every outstretched hand, every compassionate heart is extraordinary. The Silva family showed me that heroes do exist, but they don't wear capes. They wear aprons, carry clipboards, and arrange furniture in the rain. And the most beautiful thing is that any of us can be a hero in someone's life. You don't need superpowers. You don't need wealth. You just need a heart willing to see the other, and hands willing to help. Today, when I look out my window, I don't just see a street. I see a community. I don't just see neighbors. I see an extended family. I don't just see houses. I see stories of love, generosity, and hope. The rainy morning that began with my curiosity ended up transforming not only the lives of several needy families, but also my life and that of our entire neighborhood. And you know what I discovered? That observing from the window may be the first step, but participating in life is much more rewarding. If you enjoyed this true story, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Share it with people you think might be inspired by this story. And tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced a similar situation? Have you ever been surprised to discover that a situation was very different from what you imagined? Have you ever participated in a solidarity movement? I love reading your stories, and I know many of you have beautiful stories to share. Next week, I'll be back with more observations from my window, because you know there's always something interesting happening on our street. But after this experience with the Silva family, I promise I'll be less judgmental and more engaged in the stories I observe. A big kiss to all of you. And remember, sometimes the most beautiful story is happening right in front of us. We just have to open our hearts to see it. Bye, girls. See you in the next video.